realize I'm doing this. So if you don't know who I am, I primarily make TikToks and Instagram videos where I review the college applications of typically very successful high school students. I started off on TikTok a year and a half ago making these meme videos. Eventually, once the college application process started, people caught on that I went to Duke and were like, oh my God, how'd you get in? And so naturally I started to make these videos, and eventually it caught on. And because they were getting so much attention, I was like, I'll just keep doing these because it seems like kids really like this kind of stuff. And now, a year later, I have something like 250,000 followers on TikTok and 100,000 on Instagram. So clearly I've caught the attention of people. But even more recently, I've began to realize that I have more people who strongly feel negatively about what I make, more than I thought. And I've known for a long time that the content that I make is pretty controversial. It's a heated topic. It's something that everybody has an opinion on. Affirmative action just happened. It's an extremely high period of stress for high school students and parents and people in education. And on top of that, the admissions process is extremely vague and nobody knows what's going on. So evidently, trouble is going to happen. And so ever since I started making this content, I knew that there were people that didn't like me. But recently, I talked to not one or two, but 3 people who mentioned that a mutual friend of theirs didn't like me and didn't like my content. Not only did they not like me, they hated me, as per what these friends were saying. Now, what I will say, and I think a lot of content creators will agree with me about this, most content creators will never have a negative experience with a fan or someone that watches our content in person. Out of all the college campuses that I've been to, out of all the people that I've talked to, nobody has said a bad word about me. It's always been love. It's always been, dude, like, I love your content. I've been watching it for a while. You helped me with this, blah, blah, blah. I've had a lot of people that tell me that they fell in love with Duke because of me. But the people who don't like your content are always in the shadows, and most of them won't say anything to your face. Of course, I get the random DM every other day from someone who just spews vile comments about me. But even those, it's rare. I don't get them very often. But anyway, to go to the original point, I realized that there are a lot of people who don't fuck with my content. And it got me thinking to why I started making content in the first place. And I'm going to be completely transparent. In the beginning, it was a joke. I think a lot of content creators can also agree with me on this. We start off as just something to have fun with. It was fun just seeing what people had to say about my weird worldviews and my comments about religion or something like that. I don't know, I was a weird kid. But then eventually, I realized the power of having an audience and having people who are passionate about one thing. And evidently, because I go to an elite university and there are a lot of people who are interested in going to an elite university as well, the niche stuck. And it was at the same time when I dropped pre-med that I started making content, and I realized that I wanted to change my life around and think more about the situation that I'm in. And I want to be transparent with you guys. I am extremely privileged to be someone who lived for the majority of my life in America. I moved here when I was 4 with my parents. My parents have taken extremely good care of me. I've never had to worry about food most of my life. I've always had a home, and because of my parents' support and their hard work, I was able to make it to Duke, which has given me blessings upon blessings. But my parents aren't as fortunate. My mom and dad are immigrants, and they don't speak English very well, and so the jobs that they can pick up are not going to be typical white-collar, easy life jobs. My parents run a nail salon, and they work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And until I was 20 years old, as a sophomore in college, I was too immature and selfish to really consider how lucky of a position I'm in to be where I'm basically set up, if I wanted to go to med school or to get a job and live a fairly stable life as an elite university grad, all things given, while my parents had to work from Monday to Saturday, wake up at 7 a.m., get home at 8 p.m., eat dinner, watch TV for an hour, and then do it again, and have Sunday off the entire week. And so I realized that I needed to start making money, and this is when I started to think to myself that I was going to help my parents retire. And conveniently enough, this is around the time when my audience started to grow. I was at maybe 30,000, 40,000 TikTok followers. This is September of 2022. And this is when I got my first couple brand deals, and I started to realize the power of social media. And so I went crazy. I pumped out probably 5-6 videos a day, and I found a formula for what was working, which is reviewing college applications. I cut off a lot of my friends my junior year of college so I could focus on this content thing and focus on this goal of getting to $1 million as fast as possible, which is what I thought was the amount of money that I would need to help my parents retire. Which, by the way, I'm not even close. Getting there, but that was the idea in my mind. And so now looking back, I think for a long time, basically this past year, I tried to justify to myself that I was making this content to help my parents retire. That was the goal. And I think that was true, but also on the other hand, I think you're not gonna, that's still true, that's still the goal, but let's talk about my content. I think the world of creating college admissions content is tricky, or any educational content for that matter, I guess. Because let's be honest, I'm a college senior. I'm not qualified to speak on college admissions. So for the most part, I don't. If I give advice or tips, it's going to be the most surface level stuff that your average freshman in high school might try to figure out and can easily Google, but turn to TikTok because they're 14 years old. Like, what SAT score do I need to get into a top university, which is going to be 1,500 plus for most people. So the content that I do make is I read the college applications of students. And so I don't think it's as egregious. If anything, I would hope that my content is inspiring for other people, which seems like it's doing its job for the most part, where I have a lot of people DM me and tell me that they're inspired by the content that I make. They're inspired by the stories of these students. They've gained ideas for what they can do to improve their application, which I think is the goal, right? You want to be inspired, you want to be motivated to do things. But I've also come to realize that my content can be harmful too. And it's a very tricky situation. The internet is rife with content that rots your brain. And you can have a negative argument for literally anything. You have very popular streamers whose audience consists mostly of 12 and 13-year-old boys streaming with OnlyFans stars, which are basically funnels to get them to pay for their OnlyFans subscriptions. You have online course gurus who claim that they can help you make tons and tons of money through their course that are the typical shovel salesman during the gold rush type beat. You have news channels that know that by peddling negative news, they're more likely to get people to watch because people are going to be more risk averse for negative stuff and are more likely to watch it than watch happy news. So what do you get? You get a bunch of negative news. And so there's bad media everywhere. Now, I like to think that on the moral scale of things, I'm not doing that much damage. And here's the thing about viral social media, right? As someone who's a content creator for 1.5 years now, I've come to realize this very, very well. Unless you're a big fan of someone, you're only going to get the surface level, or even worse, You're going to form an opinion of someone online by what you hear from other people. And so when you only get a small snippet of whatever this person made or whatever you hear from other people about this person, it's going to be skewed. Now, this video most likely won't go viral, so most of you won't hear this nuanced take that I'm about to say, which in and of itself is a problem, because if you're going to form an opinion on someone, you probably want to be somewhat well informed, but if you don't get the full picture, then is it really your right to form that opinion? But also, can you blame that person if they don't even know that this video exists? So now we're in a very sticky situation. But what I will say is that I think the informative nature of my content and the fact that I'm simply sharing information makes my content, at the very minimum, a light, informational, and entertaining exercise to partake in. Now, if you don't agree with me on that, then I think you should block me. Like you should block any other content creator who you don't like. Now, blocking someone who you don't agree with or who you don't like is another topic for another video. But anyway, let's move on. If you don't like me because I'm goofy, or you don't like the way that I talk, or you don't like the way that I look, that's completely valid, and I totally think that you should block me. But if you're coming at my content from a moral perspective, and you believe that there's a moral right to talking shit on my name, then my question is, why don't you bring that energy to Mackenzie? We all only have a limited amount of time. And if you're trying to bring moral righteousness into the world, there's no better place than to go after a company like Mackenzie. And not a small, meager, 100,000 follower, silly little influencer on Instagram. At this point, why are you even wasting your time? And the third argument I hear for people who hate me is that I'm exploiting kids who don't know any better. Now, let's really think about how I'm exploiting these kids. For one, I don't sell anything. I don't do consulting. I don't have a book. I don't have a course. I merely make videos on the internet. Should I just not be making content at all? Would that make you happier? Now, I think, judging that most of you watching are, at least hopefully someone on the more mature side, understand that hatred ultimately comes from insecurity inside of you. And so I understand all of the supposed arguments against me and my content, but I think ultimately that's not what I'm trying to accomplish with this video. I'm not trying to hit back, or I'm not trying to disregard their opinion or to invalidate them. What I do think is that it's actually something that we can use to spur conversation, which is, what is the most effective way to lead the youth? Because the haters are right about one thing, and that's that young kids are more impressionable. And so how do we lead them to the right things to help them succeed and to help them grow? The internet is a dirty, dirty place. And trust me, there's a lot more strong content out there than seeing someone with a 5.0 GPA and a perfect SAT score get rejected from Harvard. But it is an important question. How do we inspire young people to chase their dreams and to accomplish big things? Or perhaps, is that even the right question? Is it right to try to push young people to do great things? Should we focus more on letting them accept themselves for the way that they are? Knowing that overcoming hardship builds character, do we help young people find battles, or do we push battles onto them? Is it helping kids to push them and to try them mentally and emotionally to bring them to succeed, or is it victim blaming and gaslighting them for their struggles? Maybe I'll try to answer that in the next video. If you watched until the end of this video, then I would assume that you were either having a nice meal, or you're probably scrolling on TikTok as you're listening to me ramble on and on, or something along those lines, because these videos are pretty boring. But I hope that you got something out of this video, and maybe I'll do more, maybe I won't. but I was like, hey, this could be fun. And this is something I've been thinking about for a while, so yeah, hope you enjoy it.